So, Berto, I thought we would get into the topic of cultural appropriation, partially because we got an email asking about Halloween costumes and cultural appropriation. You know, where's the line?
Right.
And what should I do? What should I be concerned with? Like, what if your daughter wanted to dress up as Moana or something?
Right.
Is that cultural appropriation? Are you going to get canceled? Are you going to lose your job? Are you going to be contacted by MAGA saying, welcome to the fold? What is the consequence? Let's get into it. Berto, what do you say?
Let's do it.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist, and I'm also a professor.
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I reset odometers for old Ferraris.
So I have an email here from long-term anonymous patron. She remained anonymous. And she asked the following questions. Hi, Dr. Kirk and Berto. First off, I just wanted to thank you both for the podcast. Life and the world has been crazy, and you keep me somewhat sane, LOL.
Aww.
Halloween is coming, and I am thinking about costume cultural appropriation. I run in liberal circles, and I'm noticing that everyone has different understandings of what is and isn't cultural appropriation. I have some examples. When I was in college, a sorority dressed up as Mexicans. I wish I was making this up. They wore sombreros and held up signs saying, "We will mow lawns for weed. We will mow lawns for weed."
Wow.
Yeah. It was disgusting, she says. Thankfully, the university addressed it, and obviously this is starkly cultural appropriation and racism. So from there, my understanding of cultural appropriation is using someone else's actual culture as a costume. That's a given to me. But then where's the line? For example, can a white person dress up as Moana or Mirabelle in Encanto because they are a character, not a culture? I think yes, with good intentions, but I am white, so what does my opinion matter, LOL. Number two, as an example, I've seen many men dress up as women for Halloween. This might have been 10 years ago, but still. Sometimes it was funny and lighthearted for the guy to dress up as a woman. Other times, I could spot the misogyny from a mile away. They would run around acting dumb, etc. I asked myself, what exactly about being a woman is so funny? So in that example, I think that the intent of the costume also matters. Are you dressing up because you like the character or because you are making fun? Just chiming in, meaning that maybe sometimes dressing up as a woman was not making fun of women, and maybe other times it was.
Right.
Going on. So my thought is, before you dress up, make sure you're being a decent human being. But I would love to know your thoughts, because I think there is a lot to unpack here. What is your definition of cultural appropriation, and what are your recommendations? Thank you so much. Love you both. End of email. End of email. So, Berto, let's get into it. What do you say?
Let's do it.
So, let's define cultural appropriation. Off the top of your head, which is, really springing it on you, what would your definition of cultural appropriation be?
Well, I will, first of all, show some of my cards in that I have regularly not liked that term, and I bristle at the idea. But I understand that it's coming from a good place. You know what it is? I mostly feel like, because like that thing about the dressing...
Well, before you talk about it, let's define it, because then you can talk about what you don't like, but you have to define what it is.
Fair enough. Cultural appropriation is when you put on, either in your body, maybe in your house, or decorations or whatever, you grab aspects from a specific culture and you display them for some purpose, but you don't belong to that culture yourself.
Okay. So that's one definition, but I spent some time thinking about this, and there are definitions in the clinical literature, in the academic literature, and I cobbled this together that makes sense to me. So cultural appropriation is when members of a dominant group, and there's some nuance there, but that's maybe an important part of the concept. Members of a dominant group adopt elements of a marginalized group's culture in a way that disrespects that culture. So the word disrespects is carrying a lot of weight there.
Yeah.
And we can get into the nuances, but to me, this makes the most sense. There's other definitions that I think kind of drag other more nuanced aspects into it. And we could even argue that the dominant versus marginalized group part of the definition is a little too narrow.
Yeah. I really like the disrespect part of that definition.
Right.
That, like, if I were me, I would lean into that one. Yeah.
Right. I think what you're getting at is that people will decry cultural appropriation when someone not of that culture is doing something of that culture,
right,
without asking what's the intent. Is it disrespectful? Is it hurtful? And I'm actually going to go over specific criteria.
Sure. Like one of the examples you gave is like, if my daughter dresses like Moana, for example. And that, to me, that's one of the things I would bristle. I would like, wait, why? What is the problem? We're dressing as a Disney character or whatever. But, if you're like dressing that way and acting in a disrespectful fashion, like, oh, look, I'm Moana, so I do these dumb things because Moana is from this race or something.
Yeah. So that's an important consideration, but that's not everything. There are examples in which, even though all that was true, you have a parent and a child who are not trying to disrespect Polynesian or Pacific Islander people. Mm-hmm. They might even elevate that character and that culture, but it still can be cultural appropriation. It still couldn't be hurtful. It still can be problematic, but we'll get into that in a second. It just gets a little funny, and everyone has to take it easy on each other, because if someone doesn't know, but then there's like willful ignorance, right? Like if you don't Google it or ask someone. Yeah. So there's a line there. But anyway, so let's take a break. When we get back, let's get into the details. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. So again, my definition at this point is cultural appropriation is when members of a dominant group adopt elements of a marginalized group culture in a way that disrespects that culture, like just making fun of them, ridicule, like the examples that anonymous patron gave, in which you have a guy dressing up as a woman, seemingly making fun of all women as if they're dumb. Or you have a sorority dressing up as quote unquote Mexicans, whatever that exactly means, because it's a large country with millions of people with a variety of different experiences. In a lot of ways, to dress up as a Mexican is to dress up as an American. Yeah. Because you have doctors and students and moms and soccer players.
Yeah.
And
my guess is they dressed up as mariachis,
Yeah,
or bullfighters,
or banditos,
or
from a Western movie or something.
Yeah, specific characters.
Right. So if you're making fun of the group, you're ridiculing the group, or you're reinforcing stereotypes, even if you're not trying to make fun of the group. If you're reinforcing a stereotype, then that can be hurtful, right? And I'm specifically using the word disrespect and hurtful, and I'm not saying the word offensive. Almost all the time in the discourse around cultural appropriation, the word "that's offensive," or "if it's offensive," or "if it's inappropriate," you'll hear that term as well. And any of my students know I am not a fan of the word inappropriate. I'm a fan of the word. I mean, it's fine, but it's a placeholder for a lack of doing your work. People just don't like it. They don't know how to articulate why it's wrong, and so they'll just say inappropriate. Now, if you're a parent and you're talking to your kid and and the kid is like, "Why can't I wear pajamas to school?" And you just say, "It's inappropriate." You say that a lot as a parent or a teacher or something, because you just don't want to have to explain it. And even if you did, they wouldn't get it.
Right.
So you just have to have this word, and so
it's a shorthand.
Yeah, of just like it's not okay, or it's not standard. It's against the rules that aren't really stated. So fine, but when it comes to social discourse and academics, I almost have never heard the word inappropriate used in a way that resonated with me. So I'm also avoiding the word offensive, because that's another term that implies harm, but some people will find things to be offensive when they aren't even the ones being offended on.
Sure.
They find it offensive for someone else, or even if it is their group, they just think it's quote unquote inappropriate, and therefore it's offensive, when the core of the matter is it harmful? Does it hurt people? And since we're a culture that is averse to talking about hurt because it's too vulnerable, right? Because people don't want to say, "Hey, that hurts my feelings," we want to seem strong, so we say that's racist, but if we say it hurts me, then the person doing the thing will have empathy and say, oh, I don't want to hurt you. But you say you're a racist, you're offensive, you're inappropriate, someone's going to say, well, what? Like,
sure, yeah.
Explain it to me, right? But if you say that hurt, also, if it doesn't hurt you, then maybe you're just grabbing onto it. You don't like the guy and you just don't want him dressing up as that thing. And you're just going to decry offensive cultural appropriation when you're not really hurt, or someone else. But we'll get into the specifics. Okay.
Sure.
So some examples are that I thought of for myself is when I would see, and I've been seeing this for decades now, of people hanging Tibetan prayer flags. Have you ever seen this before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like where would you see this?
Well, like I saw it a lot with folks that I knew were into the climbing community. Okay. And, but in some cases, because they had been to Tibet and climbed Tibet, like climbed the Himalayas, and they appreciated that culture and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay. Well, those situations might pass my test, so to speak. Not that I'm Tibetan, but would, in my guess, not be hurtful to people in Tibet. I don't know. But in my circle, what I will see Tibetan prayer flags being displayed is like in a coffee shop that's trying to signal that they're open to diversity or something.
I see.
And again, I can't be offended on behalf of Tibetans, but I have talked to Tibetans. And again, this is another question of, if I'm hearing from Tibetans, is that a representative sample of the whole country?
Sure.
And the other question is, does it need to be?
Yeah.
What if only 5% of Tibetans are hurt by seeing Tibetan prayer flags in a coffee shop that has no idea what it even means? They just think it sort of signals hippie openness and multiculturalism or something, or they think it's pretty.
Right.
Does it matter? And we'll get into that too, because it's complicated, right? So to me, when I would see these in places, Tibetan prayer flags, it just felt like in the context that I would see them. Like if I saw a climber or someone who had been to Tibet, I wouldn't have this thought. But when the places that I would see it, or I would see it like in my university, they would display Tibetan prayer flags, and I knew for a fact that the person that was displaying it had really no idea what they meant. These are religious symbols. It'd be like taking a bunch of crucifixes, which
they do all the time.
Yeah, just like stringing that, like someone in another country that doesn't understand what Catholicism is, and just willy-nilly just
well, careful, because crucifixes are cultural appropriation themselves. The cross wasn't a Christian invention, so that was culturally appropriated from older traditions. And part of the reason I'm going to end up bristling in most cases for any accusation of cultural appropriation is because there's very few pure cultures out there to begin with. And if there are, and the person is trying to celebrate them, I'm like, yeah, that's great. Like, I guess I come at it from the other angle, which is like, there's so little Colombian representation out here, right? Now, you're right that if I go to a store and they have like, Chibcha art or something like that, and it's like, gangster paradise or something, all about like Scarface and drug culture and stuff. Okay, sure, that's offensive or that's hurtful.
It's hurtful, yeah,
right,
yeah.
That's hurtful. But if it, if I go to, like, all of a sudden people are like aware that Colombia is a country and it's not just like a punchline, and they have like images of our country and images of our art and stuff, I'm only going to be happy about that.
Right. Like a coffee shop.
Sure.
Because a lot of coffee
comes from Colombia. Exactly.
Can come from Colombia. And so if someone had some Colombian art,
right,
and the people that displayed it knew what they were doing, they're appreciating. So there's a difference between appreciation and appropriation.
Well, but I've seen, or I've heard or seen people, the reason my definition didn't include the hurt part is, maybe that is my bias, that I've seen people accuse others of cultural appropriation when, from my perspective, all they were doing was trying to celebrate that culture. And that there wasn't even an accusation.
Do you have a specific example?
Yeah, like there's been things with, folks with dreadlocks, like, and that's a cultural appropriation for a specific part of a culture, for like African or maybe Jamaican or something like that. There's been specific costumes that have been called out as cultural appropriation, but they were characters in movies. So it wasn't even
like what?
like the Mulan, right?
Okay.
Mulan is
So a white person dressing up as Mulan.
right, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So the reason why I'm asking for specifics is because often conversations about cultural appropriation don't get into specifics.
Yeah.
But without specifics, it's really hard to evaluate what people are getting at. Right. If someone's like, come on, man, I mean, like costumes, like let it go. And then you hear what they're referring to and you're like, oh, okay. But if they say something like, our sorority dressed up as Mexicans, and we were going da 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 da, like what's wrong with that? And you're well, wait, like it depends on the case. It depends on what's happening.
And also, like some of the examples we could come up with or see are probably not. I wouldn't even call them cultural appropriation, because that's not the actual culture. Like you're just being offensive. As an example, it's like, I'm being a Colombian. What's your costume? Oh, I'm just selling cocaine on the side of the street or something. Like, okay, well, that's offensive. That's hurtful. That's hurtful. And it's not part of the culture. That's actually not the part of the culture.
Right.
So you're not appropriating something because that doesn't even exist.
Right. Right. So it could be argued it's attempted appropriation, but it's just straight up racist.
Right.
Yeah. So I mentioned appreciation, and let's define that. So that's engaging with the culture respectfully, not disrespectfully. So it's respect versus it's harm versus not harm, or even people saying of that other group that they appreciate that you're appreciating it. Like someone from Tibet could see someone who came to Tibet and took those home. They might even literally give the prayer flags to the person that came to Tibet, and would be absolutely delighted to learn that you put it in your house or outside or in your coffee shop or something. So appreciation is inherently not harmful, not hurtful, and is either neutral or appreciated by the group. So appreciation ideally has explicit consent from the group, which we have to also say, well, how do you get everyone in the group to consent? Mm-hmm. But if you have a representative from the group, then there's a better chance that others would be okay with it. Hard to know.
Right.
But appreciation isn't always able to be facilitated that way. I mean, every time you buy art at the art fair or at the secondhand store, do you have someone that you can talk to?
Right.
And who would you call? And even if you did, would they appreciate being tokenized that way? If you had, with like dreadlocks, for example, if you had a Jamaican friend and you just went to them and say, hey, so is it okay if I have dreadlocks? Like they might just be like, fucking A, like, can I just live my life?
Sure.
So it gets kind of weird, it gets kind of interesting. But what I don't want to happen is that people stick their head in the sand and avoid all things. Like with your kids, if your kids are white, for example, you never take any risks, even though the kid really wants to dress up as Moana. You know what I mean? Right. I don't want to live in a society that overcorrects that way. Now, better safe than sorry, but let's not limit everyone because of fear of doing something. You know what I mean? So that's why I want to make this episode, is so that we can explore it. People can listen. Now, I'm guessing we've already pissed off a good number of people with just what we said so far. And what I'll say, and I've said this before because I'll get reactions, is let's say that you did commit what I would call cultural appropriation that hurt people. Depending on what it was, if you weren't intending on doing it that way, I would not hate you for it. If you were a friend of mine, I probably just would note it. Like I remember this happening. I was at a friend's house and I went into her bathroom and she had art on the wall that I can't remember what it was, but it just kind of looked like cultural appropriation a little bit. And I just noted it. I didn't think any less of her. I didn't yell at her. I didn't judge her. I just was like, oh, mostly I just think, well, I don't think she knows. And I'm not going to say anything because I don't have the time or the confidence in the evaluation of it. Like for myself as a Japanese American, if you had a white kid that dressed up as, I'm just trying to think.
Mr. Miyagi, you know?
Mr. Miyagi. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have your, or no, you yourself are a little portly and you dress up as Mr. Miyagi and you don the accent, right? Mm-hmm. And you say wax on and wax off and Daniel-san and stuff like that, you know, especially with the accent. Would I be hurt by that? Maybe a little bit, depending on how it is implemented. You know, if it's a jokey joke, like, well, look how funny this foreigner is with his accent and
like
how
Mickey Rooney and Breakfast at Tiffany's.
I mean, that's an extreme example, but
right. But if you're playing Mr. Miyagi like that,
right?
Yeah.
If and you're not intending, you know, you're not a dick. You're just like, isn't Mr. Miyagi kind of a funny character?
Right.
You know, and you're leaning into the accent. You're leaning into, you have like the headdress and the whatever, and given my history as a marginalized group of people, Japanese Americans, any non-white group, it would hurt a little bit. And if I saw that, would I say anything? No. Would I think anything less of someone? No. So
right.
In today's discourse, if you have done something offensive, then you are instantly persona non grata. You're no one.
Yeah.
No one can talk to you. No one can retweet you. No one can invite you to a party. Everyone has to publicly state, I disavow my relationship with that fucker. No, like, we're all committing racist, sexist, elitist, classist, ableist acts probably multiple times throughout the day. So when we notice something that's happening, we're just noticing something that's happening. It's a conversation, and let's move the ball forward. But I would never cancel or harm or write someone off because they did something like that, even if it was pretty atrocious. You know, even if I had a friend who was in a sorority that dressed up as Mexicans or as a bunch of Miyagis or something, you know, and they were prancing around, you know, wax on, wax off, you know, oh, Daniel-san, oh.
I mean, to be fair, that was the 80s and probably at least most of the 90s in the culture period.
Yeah.
You know.
But even if I saw it now, I just want to be clear to the audience that it would not be grounds for me to cut off my relationship with you. On the scale of harm and of human sins, if you will.
Sure, yeah.
Like, typically, cultural appropriation is very low on that scale. Higher things to be ashamed of is if you were to kill a puppy, or if you were to push a kid down the stairs on purpose, or if you were an intimate partner violence perpetrator for 5 years on your partner and you're still in that relationship.
Yeah.
Like, there are much worse behavior or indicators of someone that I'm not going to like. Cultural appropriation is not that. But if we're going to try to move the ball forward, we have to have a fucking conversation about it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So other things that could be considered appreciation, if we get specific, because I think it's only specifics, is if you loved Mexican food, for example. Stacy and I love Mexican food. We pretty much only eat Mexican and Italian. We love all kinds of food.
So your stomach is appropriating the calories from other.
And but when push comes to shove and we're like, okay, let's go to dinner. Where should we go? We don't go to steak restaurants.
Okay.
We don't even really go to Japanese restaurants. We don't go to Thai restaurants.
Italian or Mexican?
Italian. It's like we want tacos, nachos, and we want pasta and garlic bread and carbonara and bolognese.
That's interesting.
And cannolis, and my mouth is watering. So that's appreciation. How many Mexicans, we know Mexicans, the drummer of our band and my band, Mexican, would they be hurt if they learned that my favorite food is Mexican?
They'd only be hurt depending on where you're going if it's not good enough food.
Well, that's the other thing, is that when, you know, Mexicans come to Seattle and they go to a Mexican restaurant, they're like, this isn't really Mexican. This is, you know, and it's fine. And you know, most Americans who know better say, well, it's not really Mexican. It's just like, it's a Mexican, it's an American version of Mexican food.
I think it's probably important to state that every empire that has existed, the U.S. is definitely no exception, has just by default been appropriating things left and right constantly, right? Like, if you think about, you know, just the holidays we have in the U.S., the only one that is, you know, sort of native to us is the 4th of July, right? Even Thanksgiving is like sort of a touchy subject, right? Like we're giving thanks with the natives and, things didn't go so well. But everything is, Christmas is not native to the U.S. It's certainly, and there's appropriation within appropriation, like the Easter Bunny stuff, like that's like amalgamations of various different. So, and I think even food-wise in the U.S., there's been a lot of amalgamations, appropriations, if you will. But so, yeah, what you call Chinese food, Japanese food, Mexican food, and so forth, in the, at least for a long time here, has been U.S.ifications of a lot of those meals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So loving a particular kind of food is typically not hurtful to that group. Wearing traditional clothing by invitation, like if you're at a Obon Festival in Seattle and you're a white person or a non-Japanese person and you're allowed to wear a kimono, someone says, come over and we'll put you in a kimono for fun. You can take a picture. That's not cultural appropriation. But I know people that will not do that for fear of cultural appropriation or of being labeled as cultural appropriating. Because if they take a picture, there's this white girl and she she's walking by the kimono booth and they say, would you like to try a kimono? And she's like, okay. And she hesitates because she's like, well, if I put it on and someone sees me, even if I'm pretty sure this isn't hurtful because these Japanese Americans are actually offering this to me, and I appreciate the kimono, I appreciate Japanese culture. That's why I'm at the Obon Festival. Yet, if I post it on Instagram, I'll get canceled. So,
yikes!
It's just another thing to think about. Were you about to say something?
Well, I'm just like, I didn't even think, because what's wrong with wearing a kimono if you like kimonos,
But the internet, right?
No, I agree with you 100%. But you were even qualifying it like, because you were at a festival and someone offered, and I'm like, what if you just buy the kimonos and wear them in your house? That seems to be even worse according to this internet culture, right?
Yeah.
Like, because in this case, you were saying this person was invited to wear it. I'm like, okay, so then therefore, if the person actually purchased their own and is wearing them around the house and wherever, then they'd get roasted like times 10 or something.
Yeah. I mean, there's a difference between wearing one as part of a festival for a picture or for the experience and buying it, but that's a separate example.
Yeah.
That we could get into. The other issue is Japan considered a marginalized culture because in the United States, Japanese Americans traditionally have been, but Japan itself is an empire that oppresses others.
Yeah.
So do we consider that in our cultural appropriation?
Yeah, that's why I agreed with you that I wasn't sure about obviously, the more powerful the group and the more pervasive their abuses and hurtfulness of the non-powerful groups, that's even worse. But I do worry if it's like, oh, well, you're part of one of the less powerful groups, so it's okay for you to be hurtful to this other less powerful group.
Yeah.
That's still not okay.
But it's part of the context, and it's part of my criteria that I'll get into in a second. Another example that in all likelihood is considered appreciation is you have a non-African drummer who studies West African drumming. Through my travels, when I come across things like that, the West Africans that I talk to are not hurt when you have a white guy from San Francisco that's learning how to incorporate West African rhythms into his style or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Actually, this is interesting because as you probably remember, Eminem was accused of cultural appropriation. Vanilla Ice was accused of cultural appropriation.
In Seattle, we have, what's his face?
Macklemore?
Yeah.
Macklemore, yeah. And, it's this question like, wait a minute. Or Elvis. Elvis, of course, was definitely accused of the Beatles, you could argue, right? So in music, I guess what I'm getting at is in music, there's a rich tradition of borrowing and using other cultures' styles, and also a rich tradition of abusing, like people in power abusing that to not pay well, or maybe even at all, to the culture that originated the thing, and then all of a sudden divert all the money to the powerful.
Yeah. So let's talk about Elvis. I wasn't planning on it, but there's a lot that can be explored through this. So you've already touched on one element, that you had black artists that would write music or create a sound, and this white guy comes along with white executives and a white music label and white consumers and white radio stations that refuse to play black artists. And in a part of the country where Jim Crow is still present, you still have segregation. Black people can't drink out of the faucet. They can't sit at the lunch counter. They can't sit in the front of the bus.
Yep.
So in that context, you have Elvis at the center of all this, in a certain way of saying it, stealing music and a sound and a whole vibe, a whole rhythm, a whole tradition that's been burbling up in the African American South, and a lot of it has roots in Africa. And the only reason why those roots exist in the South is because of slavery. It's not like It's not like West Africans came here on vacation and stayed. They were raped and killed and and sold and da. So when they were not toiling away in the fields, they entertained themselves and built themselves back up for the next day of horrors to in the ways that they did back home. And they would meld all these West African traditions and the sound and the rhythms and everything. And they also incorporated Western music, European music. They incorporated the guitar, for example, and other sorts of instruments, also certain keys. And
jazz is a total amalgamation for sure.
A lot of the West African key or the note selection is pentatonic, if you're familiar, whereas in Western music we have 7 notes in our scale, but there are 12 available notes, and you can do a lot of things with that. And you put those things together, so you have these slaves and post-slavery Jim Crow incorporating Western music and country music. Also, they're incorporating that. And country music is an amalgamation of Irish and other traditions that came over and sort of.
And by the way, Latin America is doing the same thing at the same time. Like all our dance music, which I love, salsa, merengue, all these things, they're coming from a lot of those same African beats and being molded into a Caribbean son sort of like music, and then it spreads and it varies and stuff like that, and it absolutely gets appropriated by the white ruling conquistador class, right?
So you have Elvis, that bursts onto the scene, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, he invented this music!" And Sun Records in Memphis, they're geniuses. And you're just like, well, you just copied what the black people were doing and slapped a white guy on it. He didn't even write any of the shit. And you're claiming that it's yours or something. And you're making all the money out of it. And you're not honoring, you're not, if Elvis brought that writer onto the stage or incorporated him into the band, or when he had a movie, he elevated the black artist, then that would be different. And he didn't really. There were things that he did.
I'm not familiar. Like, to be clear, I know so little about Elvis. Everything I know about Elvis, I learned from Forrest Gump. But what I do know is that the music was like, what it was? It was this built-in tariff where people were not interested, nor were they being exposed to that music if they were white. And so when they see through this window, this other version of it, they're like, ooh, I like that white boy. I like what he's doing.
Yeah, but here's the thing. So on the other side of the coin, which is also true, that Elvis himself grew up on the wrong side of the tracks alongside black people. And he was poor and knew and grew up with black music and white music and country music because of his class, because of his poverty status. And he learned that and absorbed it. At the age of 5, as he's just casually, passively absorbing this stuff, is he cultural appropriating? No, he's a white kid on the wrong side of the tracks that's absorbing what's around him. In the same way that Eminem.
I was going to say.
So when he decides, I want to make music that's what comes out of him.
Right.
He's not putting on a fake mask. This is him.
Right.
So to blame him for making music that made sense to him isn't fair.
Yeah, like why are you not writing country songs, Eminem? Or Elvis, why are you not playing the viola concerto?
Right.
Yeah.
So to just write Elvis off or Eminem off as cultural appropriation is reductive.
Right.
Can you criticize someone like Elvis for not doing his part? Because he could have done a lot. He had a lot of power. Yeah. But you can't blame him for liking that music and for that music to be in him. It was clearly in him.
And criticize the industry and his manager and all these things. Yeah, absolutely.
And criticize the fucking white people for not buying Ledbetter and all the other artists because they heard it. It was out there.
Yeah.
And all the industry, the white industry that prevented those artists from being played on the radio. And all the politicians and the KKK and all the racists that are like, you're not going to play that N-word music in here.
Right.
Blame them for sure. But Elvis himself is more a product of that system than the creator of it. Okay. The other thing is any musician like you and I know as a Colombian musician who has roughly half of your genetics come from Spain and half of your genetics come from the land, and maybe some from African slaves as well, right? Did you do that level of what percentage are you?
Now I forget, but I know that I have African for sure.
Like 5-10% or something? Maybe it was like 5%.
Maybe. Because I also have Asian and I have Ashkenazi Jewish and I have, but definitely the bulk is Iberian Peninsula and then Native American from South America.
Right. And me as both white, Kansas, Swedish, English, and then Japanese, for us as musicians, we understand that every musician, every writer incorporates what moves them. Yeah. And music is the universal language. And if I'm hearing something from the other side of the globe and it moves me and it subconsciously works its way through my writing, is that racist of me?
Right.
Now, if I want to do reggae, for example, and I put on a wig with dreadlocks and I start going, huh, I do the accent, then that's a different thing because it's not me. I didn't grow up that way.
I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to say like, man, if you really like it, just do it. Here's where my line is. And maybe my line is too permissive, but you take a trip. Actually, I invite you back to Colombia. And this time you feel adventurous and you go down to the Amazon without me because I'm not going down there. But you encounter one of those tribes that is either barely contacted. But you like spend a couple days with them and they show you some local music they have. And of course, no one's ever heard this. No one's recorded it, nothing. You grab your little iPhone and you like record some of it. You come back here, you make a whole record in this style, you make all this money, you never mention them, you never give them any money, none of that. To me, I'm like, yeah, you're culturally appropriating in a mean way,
Well, you're misrepresenting your creativity because you're stealing someone who doesn't have the ability to get their stuff out
exactly. there. And the fact is, and I go even as far as, even if on your website and stuff, maybe even in your interviews, you're like, well, I learned all this from this little tribe over there. But you didn't use any of the money to help them or do anything. Like, I still would be like, dude,
Okay, well, let me ask you. So if you did that on your website and interviews and you sent 10% of your profits to this tribe or an organization down there or something, would that be okay?
Well, it's starting to get a little better. That said, there is such a thing as copyright. If you literally took let's say you took their melody straight out, well, technically you're violating their copyright, even though they didn't patent or copyright it with our copyright office. So as a musician, I would still be like, no, actually you owe them all those royalties because it's their melody.
But what if it's...
But if it's more like inspired by and it's in the style of, and I start feeling better about you, depending how much you're doing. I start being like, okay, well, fine. But it's like there are those egregious levels of like, no, we're just going to steal it.
Okay. So let's take a break. When we get back, I'm going to go over the principles that will help guide all of these cases. Let's do it. All right, we're back from the break. I want everyone to take a deep breath and remember that, we're having a conversation, and when it comes to these kinds of topics, if we don't have a conversation, then we're avoiding and we're not moving the ball forward, and we're going to remain in fear and judging everyone and avoiding the topic and canceling anyone that brings it up. I want to give an example that just popped into my head that exemplifies this avoidance. When I was in high school, I had a friend that worked at a ballpark, and he was the concession stand guy.
Okay.
And this black guy came up to the concession stand, and my friend, he's white. And this black customer comes up and orders licorice. He said, I would like some licorice. And my friend is telling us this story later. And he says, and my friend says, okay, so then I said, do you want red or do you want... and I didn't know what to say.
Oh my God.
Okay. So,
oh my God.
And I see people do this today.
But it was coming from, I can see how it was coming from a good place.
Right.
I would have probably done the same thing when I was young, because I grew up in Colombia in a monoculture. And when I moved up here, it was my first exposure to a lot of different cultures and races and things. And I probably would have, in fact, I remember that feeling of like, I'm not sure how I should say things. What should I? Yeah.
But we have an intelligent guy, my friend, for everyone else, every non-black customer, they ask for licorice. He says, you want red or black?
Right.
But with a black person, he hesitates because he's worried that just saying the word black as a color of licorice is offensive.
Well, at least he didn't say, do you want red or African American? You
want Native American or African? Oh shit.
Yes.
So this is what happens. And I see stuff like this even today. I see people, and there's an example of this actually. I'm on a rant here.
Yeah.
This is a local story for me.
Okay.
So, I've avoided talking about this for a long time.
Oh, full disclosure time.
But in our neighborhood is a world-class zoo, Woodland Park Zoo. And officially, you would say it's in the Finney Ridge or the Woodlawn neighborhood of Seattle. I don't live in that neighborhood specifically. I have, actually, back in the day. But anyway, and as a promotion thing, the zoo worked with local businesses that were right across the street, the Finney Ridge area. You're familiar with that area? And these businesses all bought these neon signs from the zoo and displayed them in their windows. And it didn't say Woodland Park Zoo, but they were all animals.
I see.
At the time, the Woodland Park Zoo was really pushing their, at least this is my perception, their lemur display, their lemur
I remember that
exhibit.
Yeah.
Because, and it's still there, and it's really great. They have various different lemurs that they sort of rotate in and out, and the lemurs are hilarious and weird. They make the strangest noises. And they have these silhouettes of these lemurs in neon that are in a lot of these businesses, along with other animals, elephants and stuff. And about 5 years ago, at the height of George Floyd and whatnot, there was this outcry from a local community group, the Finney Ridge something or other, like the Finney Ridge Community Association or something. It was a local group of people. And they had decided, by the way, pretty much majority white people, like 95%. Like Finney Ridge is, this is all going towards a black racist thing.
I see.
But the Finney Ridge neighborhood is like 95% white. I mean, you won't even see Asians.
Okay.
Like, as an Asian myself, because in North Seattle, I almost never see Asians. I go to Bellevue, it's like, I think I looked up the stat. It's like 60% non-white people in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah. And so I just want to say that it's, so a lot of white people, liberals, right, and probably above average income, and they get together and they decide that these lemur neon signs that are silhouettes are racist against black people.
No.
Yeah.
I don't even want to try to unpack the mental gymnastics.
Try. Please.
First of all, were they using like African colors on the
No.
like green, red, black?
A neon sign, like a red neon.
Yeah, a red neon sign. I mean, the most obvious thing, which it just would reveal their extreme racism, would be like that it's like they're monkeys, they're apes or whatever. So like this is, offensive towards black people.
That's it?
No.
What else could it be?
No.
But that's what they said. So,
But did they give a rationale other than this insanity?
well, to them, it was obvious. Because,
What?
Well, so, okay. So,
I'm so mind blown.
okay, yeah. So here's the leap, but there is a leap. There is a connection that when racists would, and racism was mainstream
Sure.
up until a certain point. It still is out there, but it was so mainstream in the past that you would have companies that would market their product using apes or monkeys to depict African Americans or
Right.
or black people. They would have cartoons, for example, that would have an ape, and it would be coded as a black person.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And there were literal people who thought that black people were closer genetically to other primates than white people. So there is a history of that. But it's quite a leap to look at in the year 2020 to look at a neon sign of a lemur in particular,
Yeah.
because lemurs look more like cats than they do monkeys. But anyway, it's a stretch to say that lemurs have been used in the past to depict black people in a racist manner. Because lemurs have these big tails and these big arms, you know what I mean? They
Right.
But even if they were chimps, even if they were gorillas, for a bunch of white people to look at that, but I don't know what they really felt on the inside. I don't know if they were worried because they had racist so let me give a twist to this.
Sure.
That a black person who was in this, a very minority black person that's in this Finney Ridge community, and I'm going off of reporting. I don't have firsthand accounts, so I can only, and I'm also doing it from memory, so take that into account. But recent memory, because I this incensed me so often that I occasionally reread all of the reporting on it and just be like, do I have this right?
Yeah.
And there was a black person that was on this committee, this association, that did say that they were treated in a racist way, and there were white people in the group that would refer to black people as monkeys.
I see.
So was that related? Were there other people in the group, like the leadership, that were trying to disavow that by claiming any depiction of monkeys is racist, to signal that they're trying to react against the minority of people that were associating black people with, or I don't know.
But that just seems like pouring the wrong kind of like gasoline on the wrong kind of fire.
So what happened was all of those neon signs had to be disposed of.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And those neon signs were this symbol on Finney Ridge that tied the whole community together.
Right.
And if you saw it, you wouldn't even really notice because they were, just in various different storefronts. But if you knew as a local like me and all the other locals, you'd say like, oh, everyone's showing their support for the park and a part of the Finney Ridge community. It really brought everyone together.
Right.
And it was lemurs, Berto.
Yeah.
Lemurs. So this is all what I'm wanting to get at, which is that if we can't have a conversation, you get shit like that. You get my friend that doesn't want to ask a black guy if he wants black licorice because everyone's so fucking stupid and afraid because of the backlash that will happen when you do quote unquote mess up, that we just get frozen in time and we go backwards.
What's coming to mind is I'm imagining, like, let's say, in my neighborhood or whatever, there's a movement, like an outdoorsy movement, which wouldn't be surprising, right? And like, let's get more fresh air, all these things. And then they start putting little river neon signs or river stickers everywhere. Rivers. And then I'm like, oh my God, these racist bastards. Can you guess where I'm going with this?
Mermaids?
No, of course you can't guess where I'm going with this. But I would be like, in my insanity, I'd be like, oh, I see what you're doing. this is a reference to the illegals crossing the Rio Grande.
So actually, that's good.
You see what I'm saying?
That is, I mean, I can see that.
I mean, I guess there's more of a connection there, but that's still insane. You know what I mean?
There's not more of a connection.
Well, certainly more than lemurs to any human being, right?
Well, that's interesting. It feels closer for you.
Well, I'm just saying, like, yeah, technically, people do cross the river trying to come to this country.
Well,
but
maybe
why would anyone putting rivers in their storefront? Like,
well, actually, this is another aspect which is interesting. That for you, a river symbol feels slightly closer, still very far from the troubles of immigrants that are forced due to economic problems. They're just looking for work or for safety or something, and the system forces them to risk life and limb to get to the United States, only to work at a sweatshop job in Arizona, so they just send a couple bucks back home,
and it's connected to a racist term, and therefore it's like
So for you, that feels closer, but to me, because I grew up in the United States, I have a closer proximity to racists that will use monkeys as a symbol for black people. I think for you, that doesn't resonate with you as much. Because I think a part of it is, if I might finish, is that as kids, we didn't have the Cartoon Network. So we just had cartoons on Saturday morning, literally just Saturday morning in the 70s. And I mean, maybe you had like Fat Albert in the middle of the week, but I don't think so. I think it was all Saturday morning. And even that was only for like 3 hours. And there were very few programs that you could show to kids because they weren't really making stuff. So one of the things they would do is they would recycle really old cartoons from the 20s and 30s and
inappropriate, like abusively racist cartoons.
The racist stuff. And I remember seeing that stuff. It was quickly shoved in a back room, like come 1976 or something, whenever people started waking up to it. But it was still around. And so I'm just pointing this out because another part of the topic of cultural appropriation or even the very notion of racism or of microaggressions is context dependent and person dependent, and what could be more offensive to one person or more hurtful to another person or more likely, and we're not even talking about our groups, right? Like, I'm not black, you're not black, you're not Mexican, I'm not Mexican.
But I am Colombian, and Colombians do come illegally as well.
But I don't know if people think of Colombians.
Well, they think of Venezuelans, which is even further from Colombia.
Yeah.
But I'm actually coming at this from a different angle.
But for sure, Colombia, for ignorant Americans, gets lumped in to all Latin American.
But I'm actually approaching it from a different angle, which is this. In this bizarre, stretchy world that I'm trying to imagine myself being in, I could, I guess, see that since currently the illegal immigration topic is extremely in everyone's minds, and ICE is in everyone's minds, and people do actually technically cross the river to blah, 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 that I could see that if people were actually trying to be racist somehow, using the symbol for that, there is sort of a connection there. Even though...
Right, well, so it depends on who it is, right?
But even though in reality, you have to be like... But you'd have to ask, but wait, what is the message there? If it is racist, what is the message they're sending? Because if anything, one might think maybe they're supporting the immigrants, right? So I almost see that. Whereas the zoo advertising their lemurs in this day and age, like I'm like, what?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So all of those neon signs taken down.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Like, it's one thing for someone on Twitter to say, oh my God, it's racist that they have these lemurs. And I would scoff, but I'd move on, even if it had a bunch of upvotes or whatever.
Sure.
But when you have a group of people that get together and presumably have a debate and talk about it, and they decide, now, I'm wondering what was in their heart. Because if in their heart they're like, I don't think this is racist, but I don't want to appear racist.
Right.
And someone raised their hand and said, it might be racist.
I see.
And I can't, as a white person, stand up and say, I don't think it's racist. So Did they all move? So that's
They all white knighted their way over.
Right. And I saw a lot of that happening.
Sure.
I mean, I was still working at the university and going to all the meetings I mean, can you imagine?
I can imagine.
I mean, it was
the dog piles of virtue signaling.
Yeah, well, and professors love to talk. So
sure.
It's talky, and everyone has something to say. And, were there wise things said? Yeah. Were there important things said? Yeah. I mean, a lot of my understanding of racism and of society have to do with my colleagues at the university. So, and it had to do with those conversations. But I'll tell you that there were some difficult, and one day, Berto, I will tell that whole story, but there's not enough distance at this point.
What I do, okay, I could imagine a scenario where it turns out there are a set of very racist store owners in that area. I'm making this up. And they decide to put on no lemurs allowed signs with the little neon thing. So they put like crosses everywhere, and they know their winky thing. They're saying that we're not allowing black people is what we're saying. And someone catches wind of this because they overheard the conversation or whatever. Then, okay, now we're having a conversation. Racist people are doing racist things.
Right.
The lemurs are irrelevant.
Right.
They're being racist.
So when you have a mother that has a daughter that wants to dress up as Moana, and the daughter is not of Polynesian Pacific Islander descent, and you have that mother going, oh no, what do I do?
Yeah.
This is what they have to contend with.
Yeah.
Not just the reality of cultural appropriation,
right,
but the Twitter bullshit backlash and the mob on TikTok that God fucking knows, because they're afraid of asking a black person if they want black licorice. It's that bad.
Right.
So part of the reason why I want to have this conversation is it's okay to talk about it, even if you're wrong. And I would do this all the time as a professor, is that I would say cultural conversations are mostly about questions, not about conclusions. And it's about conversations. It's not about statements or rules. And in order to do that, you have to be willing to break some eggs to make this omelet, and you have to be willing to make mistakes yourself, and you have to be tolerant of other people saying stupid shit.
Right.
It's okay. We're all okay. No one is on the verge of being locked up or of lynched or of enslaved or of genocided. We're just having a conversation. So realize that. Now, trauma, but that's trauma.
Yep.
That's something being triggered. It's not happening now. We're safe. We're in the zone. Can we make mistakes? If people listening to this episode 50 years from now, will half the episode be grounds to cancel me? Probably. I don't know. But that doesn't mean we don't have a fucking conversation about it.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. If 50 years from now they listen back to this and they say, Kirk, half of what you said, and what I'll say to those people is, I'm operating from my space and time and place and culture, and I can do nothing about that.
Right.
But avoiding the whole fucking thing, or virtue signaling, or being that white knight and just decrying everything, that's inappropriate, this is a microaggression, everything's a problem, that doesn't help at all.
Right.
So here are my principles, Bruno. So these are the questions. This is a set of questions I came up with, and as I was going over it, I kept iterating on it, and I'm guessing if I had more time, I would iterate on it some more. But here are the questions. Number one, do people from that group consider it hurtful?
Okay.
Pretty easy, right?
Yep.
I'm not using the word offensive. I'm not using the word racist or something, because although those have definitions, they've kind of lost it. So hurtful is pretty easy to understand. Do most people in that group consider it hurtful? Now, what if a minority of the group consider it hurtful? Maybe that's also something, right? Number two, is it a dominant group appropriating from a marginalized group? Now, that's important to ask. And what I'll say is that if you say yes, maybe, no to these questions, it's just helping you to guide your thinking.
It's not an all or nothing for any one of the questions. Yeah.
Right. You don't need to meet all these criteria for it to be it. It's just like, let's look at it from this angle. It's like, okay. So ask yourself, So let's look at the monkey thing, in the storefront, and let's think about another example, the sorority. These are pretty stark examples. So you have, and by the way, as someone from the Greek system myself in the early 90s, absolutely.
that was all the time.
In fact, my very first week in the fraternity, and I went into the fraternity thinking everyone loved fraternity people.
Oh, sorry. First of all, what is it called? The Greek system. The Greek system.
Yeah.
So to start with, it's an appropriated culture.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's because of the Greek letters.
Yeah, but it's, the togas and the thing. There's a whole thing about it.
Well, that specifically, yeah. But toga, it's not like that was from Animal House and stuff. Anyway.
See, I don't know much. But all I know is, to me, my
not that we didn't have toga parties. Right. But anyway, the point is that my first week, a sorority and a frat had an exchange, they call it, where the sorority goes to the frat and they have a big party and everyone gets drunk and stuff. And it was a pimp hoe party.
Great.
And the girls dressed up as hoes and the guys dressed up as pimps.
So you didn't even subvert the stereotype.
So it's not. So I don't know what the guys dressed as because they were all in the fraternity, but there was probably a lot of racism happening in that. But some of my friends from high school were in this sorority and they were walking home, which is just a couple blocks away, and super drunk, and they're dressed up in lingerie and real revealing. And a reporter from the University of Washington paper, The Daily, was walking home and came across these three girls from my high school and said, "What are you girls doing?" And they're like, "We're dressed, we went to a pimp hoe exchange." And he's like, "Oh, can I take a picture and maybe ask you some questions?" Does that. And then he writes it up. And then it became,
oh my God,
it became this huge conflict between the Greek system and everyone else at the university. Most people at the university aren't in the Greek system.
Right.
And so it was then when I realized that everyone hated the Greek system. I thought it was just, everyone's okay, whether you're in the Greek system or not. My mom and my sister were like, "You're joining a frat. You shouldn't live in the dorms." And I wanted to live at home. And my mom was like, "No, you're not. You're going to move to campus and you're going to be in a frat." And I'm like, okay. Because my sister and my mom were in a sorority.
Anyway.
And so it was that week. Anyway, so let's talk about the sorority example of the Mexicans and the monkeys in Finney Ridge. And we might not even be able to answer this question, but Berto, I'm going to ask you, the sorority example, do most people from the quote-unquote Mexican group consider it hurtful given the way it was described to you?
I would imagine so. I'm not Mexican, but I am Latino. And the stereotype that they presented was, we will mow lawns for pot, for weed?
For weed, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just presented in a disrespectful, hurtful manner.
Right.
Yeah.
What about the monkeys?
So I think
would black people,
most black people would be offended that question is being posed.
Yeah. I hate to pull out this phrase, but my black friends, I have asked about
some of my best friends are black. Yes.
I've asked black people that I know, and they have all universally said that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
In fact, those privileged white people who voted to take those down, I'm really questioning
exactly
who the fuck those people are.
Yeah, because, I mean, again, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they were coming at it from an uninformed, stupid, good place. But there's a chance that they're like, well, yeah, everyone knows that, black people are like monkeys, right? So this is offensive.
Yeah.
Which is extremely racist.
Well, okay. So I should add that in the reporting, a black person did alert someone. Either, I don't think they were on the committee, but like a customer or someone that lived in the community had told the association or told a business owner that they didn't like it. So you could imagine that at the height of George Floyd, there's just a lot of highlighted racism. Racism has been around, but you have it being highlighted and you can be very obviously a raw nerve, especially after George Floyd. You see a monkey And it's just like, can I just go through the day without having a reminder of the constant racism that's going around me? I don't know what was going through this reported black person's mind, but I will add that the association had reportedly heard from one black person.
I see.
But it wasn't like a group of black people. And there was no report of them reaching out to a black association and saying, is this the consensus, or what do you think? They just went forward with it. So now, on the scale of things, is it this horrible atrocity that these neon signs were taken down? No. But it's just an example of something that happens a lot, particularly, and things like this happen, particularly in Seattle, particularly then. You know what I mean? Now, what I will say overall is that, if I use that metaphor again, to make an omelet, we're going to have to break eggs. So if we're going to move the ball forward, there's going to be some anomalies.
Yeah.
Because what people will say, like on the right, is everyone's virtue signaling, and it's all fake, and none of it is. Everyone's inventing racism. No, racism is real, and so we're pushing back, and we're being activists, and we're advocating, and when we do that, some stuff's going to get swept up that doesn't need to be there.
It still gives me this vibe of like same scenario, Woodland Park Zoo. They're trying to advertise, and they have a sloth exhibit, so they put out little neon sloths everywhere, and some white people are like, oh my gosh, this is extremely racist against Latinos. Why? Well, sloths are lazy.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, you're the one being, like, you're the racist one.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, spare us your help.
Yeah.
Don't help us.
Yeah.
I mean, again, unless there's literally like maybe if the facts on the ground were different, like there's currently a campaign by all the fascists to like actually label all the Latinos as slots or something, and then okay, fine, but if it's just random, it's like, what? God.
Right. Okay, so the second question is it a dominant group appropriating from a marginalized group? So the Mexican sorority, yes or no?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I don't know the details of that sorority, but I'm guessing they were majority white. So
yeah, I mean, even if they are Mexican American, I think is what you're getting.
Although technically Mexican, I don't know the demographics in Mexico, but in Colombia, the ruling class is majority white. Yeah. So it's not as simple as, it's more like, if they're from the U.S. and they are not Mexican, and in the Mexican culture in the U.S. is a minority, then yeah.
Well, it's an interesting nuance because, like, our drummer Carlos is white Mexican.
Right.
I think he had, I don't know his DNA makeup, but he passes as a white guy.
Right. Well, which is why I'm removing the race part of it. I'm just saying.
But let me extend this. So let's say he hosts a party and he wants to dress up in a sombrero and it's his idea.
Yeah.
He's a Mexican American. He's not even Mexican American. He's a Mexican guy who is an immigrant worker in the United States, because he worked for aerospace. There's a lot of Boeing aerospace around here, and he's an engineer. And so he was working up here, and he wanted to host a party in which everyone dressed up in sombreros and had, fake 6-shooter guns and had big mustaches and had a Speedy Gonzales accent and held up a sign that said, "We'll mow lawns for weed." Is that cultural appropriation, Berto?
I wouldn't call it cultural appropriation. I would call it hurtful and inappropriate.
Hurtful to who?
To Mexicans.
Yeah, or to brown Mexicans.
Well, to any Mexicans. Just because I think
but
even if you're part of the same group, you're still hurtful. You can still be hurtful to your same group. Just watch Django Unchained.
But there's subgroups, right? So you you could argue that it's a white Mexican appropriating brown Mexican or rural Mexican or some. I don't know how they would frame it exactly.
Maybe.
Well, that's how I would frame. That's how I would see it. Is that there's a group that's being harmed, and you could even see a white Mexican doing this to distance himself from a group that he wants to distance himself from, because it's like, I don't want to be seen as that kind of Mexican or something like that. You know what I mean? So it's two groups, and one is dominant, because you look at TV movie stars in Mexico and they're all white for the most part. You know what I mean? And then you see...
I guess so. I just kind of see it like you being half Japanese, you could host a party where we're all going to dress up in crappy looking kimonos and have fake Japanese accents and do weird stuff. You're being hurtful and disrespectful, even though you're part of the culture. And it's not because you're half. You could be full. Like it's still,
right. Can you be hurtful to your own culture?
And I think yes.
But I say this because you could.
But I see what you're saying. There is definitely a socioeconomic and racial disparity, even within countries and cultures and things like that. So.
Right. Now, could a Mexican sorority have a party, and let's say they're of mixed color, if you will.
Yeah.
You know, some are more native, some are more Spanish, right? There's also a German contingent. That's where you get the accordion sort of polka music and the beer, actually, in both Japan and in
Latin America.
And you have a Mexican sorority that is having a party in which they want to do an American party, and everyone dresses up as Paris Hilton and Paris Hilton, let's just say, that influencers, that they all want to dress up as vapid girls who have too much makeup on and are stupid and constantly on their phone.
Right.
Is that cultural appropriation? Is that harmful?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know if I call these things cultural appropriation, but I do think that there's kinds of those things that can be hurtful and damaging. Like, as an example, when I was a kid, there was a very popular TV show in Colombia. That was a Colombian TV show. And one of the main characters was a gringo, and he had a really thick accent in Spanish, and he was sort of like kind of a little dumb, but not super dumb, but kind of did things that everyone was like, ha, stupid gringo, that kind of thing. To me, I was sort of a little offended, even though I'm not born here, but I felt like I belonged to this culture as well. And so I was a little offended. I was like, oh, that's not cool.
Hurt?
Yeah, hurt. Sorry. I was a little hurt because even on behalf of, but I also felt hurt directly. I'm like, well, I'm part Colombian, part U.S.
You're slight Americanized because as a kid you lived in the United States,
right?
And so
what? Yeah.
So this you would have at least what most people would consider a marginalized group, or at least not a dominant group in the Western Hemisphere that is depicting a member of the dominant group, and so it could still be hurtful.
So even now,
but would we point at that and say, that's horrific when we compare it to the sorority that is doing it to the Mexicans? It adds to the intensity of it, in my opinion.
Well, I wouldn't call the sorority thing horrific, but I would certainly, if I were categorizing, you're right that I would probably categorize that one as worse. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So this third question, is it malicious?
Right.
Is it intentional? So the sorority, was that malicious?
It doesn't sound like it, but maybe it could have been. They could have been like, those Mexicans, they're always just working for weed or something.
I mean, for it not to be malicious, they would have to be so stupid.
I mean, wait, when was this?
I don't, maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. If it is contemporary, you might be right, I guess.
Well, at any point. I mean, even when I was in a sorority in fraternity in 1990, we would, if you would have cornered us and asked us if it was malicious, if we're being mean, I think we would all say yes.
I have pictures of me at 4 years old in a little skit for my daycare where I'm wearing the little rice hat and I have my eyes have makeup on and I have a long goatee or something, and we were all dressed in our little things and we're doing our little dance and singing our little thing. It was probably not cool.
No. But
of course it wasn't malicious,
right? But you also weren't holding up a sign saying "We'll mow lawns for weed."
No, sure, but I'm
and you're also not a grown adult.
Okay,
sorority is filled with grown adults.
But the teachers that were coordinating it were grown adults.
Yeah, but also, what was okay? So let's get into it. You're dressing up as a Fu Manchu Chinese.
It was a skit where we were all Chinese.
Yeah. So I say Fu Manchu because that's like what I think of when I think of like stereotyping.
And I actually, it was.
And what was the skit?
I mean, I don't remember. I was 4, but I do remember. I remember being in the little costume and
it was
having to
like a song,
sing a little song and walk a certain way.
In Colombia,
like you see, I'm holding my hands and I'm kind of walking with my feet sort of like this. And I remember all this
in Colombia.
In Colombia,
yeah. And it's obviously appropriating.
And I didn't know a single Chinese person, period.
Right.
as far as I knew, I'm sure there were. I just didn't know any of them.
I don't know, but even if we looked at your teachers, given your memory and your vibe of understanding the times and the place and the teachers, would you say that was malicious?
No.
Okay, so
But it was uninformed. And
but that's just one thing. So when you look at the sorority thing, yes, that's fucking malicious.
Yeah, I guess so.
They know they're being mean to Mexicans. I guarantee
I
you.
guess you're right.
I guarantee you, if a Mexican had walked up the sorority, they would have all stopped what they were doing, or at least, been cringing. You know what I mean?
No, you're right. You're right.
They wouldn't be like,
sounds right.
look. Whereas you, and maybe even your teacher, if there was a Chinese person in the audience, they might be like, "Oh, we're doing a Chinese thing. You might like it." You could see them thinking that, right? So that's different.
I can see that.
So malicious. It was the monkey in the window malicious?
Well, I certainly don't believe that the zoo and I'm giving the benefit out to all the window owners that it was.
Okay, next question.
But there is a question. But were the people denouncing it being malicious about
That's a different question.
Right.
Because they're calling cultural appropriation.
Sure.
So we're about ignorance. So is it ignorant? Was the sorority?
Yes.
Was the business owners ignorant?
No.
Yeah.
If they ignorant again.
Yeah.
Like study genetics, damn it.
Yeah. Or ask at least more than one black person. How about that? The fifth question: does it have a hurtful history? So this is important because when it comes to like blackface or something, you can't just go off of maliciousness or ignorance. You have to understand that for some people, even though they might not have lived during the time when it was prevalently used as like with watermelon and blackface and minstrel shows, that whole thing. And even though that's long past and most of the people who lived through that era are long gone, it has a history, and for black people today, it can hurt, right?
Yeah, that long history of zoos with lemur exhibits advertising their exhibit in the local community. Yeah, that long history.
Okay. Well, but this would be the one thing that you could identify the monkey thing with. It's a stretch, but it's the only thing, and it's a stretch, but it's a thing.
But it's the wrong kind of stretch.
Well, but in my hype, because I don't know what that one black person felt or what they were looking at, but I'm speculating that's what they were looking at.
Like I could, again, you could throw these well, wait, the zoo doesn't have a lemur exhibit, and remember that article a month ago about how racists have been starting to use lemurs for blah. Like, there's none of that, right? There's
but let me lay out a possible pathway that is within this question of does it have a hurtful history? And I'm saying hurtful for a reason, okay? That you have a black man who walks through white Finney Ridge and is reeling from George Floyd and Philando Castile and just dozens, hundreds, thousands of atrocities by the system, and no one's doing, and Seattle police specifically had been found 20 years ago in a really landmark study to pull black people of color over faster, arrest them faster, charge them faster, give them tickets faster. It was a systematic review, very famous, lots of data collected, and it was there. And so, just imagine that you're walking down the street, George Floyd, and you are also reeling from racists on Twitter calling George Floyd a monkey, because that happened, calling him an ape, a drug-addled, subhuman, this sort of stuff. And you see in the white Finney Ridge, and you see depictions of monkeys around. And it could be felt as something you just don't want to have to look at to be reminded of. And it's a stretch, but again, with that history, it's not a stretch for that person to be like, I just want to walk down the street without this reminder. And can you just please get rid of these fucking things? You know what I mean? Like, I know my grandma, if she were to walk down the street, it would trigger her or something. Even if he's wrong about that, it's like, maybe. Okay. So now I don't know what this person, the purported person who came forward and said it was a problem, I don't know what they were thinking. I don't even know if that's true. It might have just been something that the association said. Someone came forward. And I can't articulate it because I'm not black.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so I'm just taking
yeah.
a guess, but that would be the only thing of the questions I have where you could go, okay, maybe it was that.
I'm going to go even as far as to say that, like, if I was, I don't know, some sort of judge in this case and all these facts came to me and the person legitimately tells me the whole story you just told me, I'd still be like, well, I don't think this is going to help heal the things you're describing, which are real, by us reacting this way. So no, like, no,
Right.
these signs stay.
Right. Well, that's why the association
Yeah.
should have looked into
Right,
it
right,
further
right.
and then made a decision, or went to the guy and said, can we do something else?
Yeah, like have the conversation.
Yeah.
Like what you're saying. And like, because I do think that is the thing missing from so many of these situations is, now, I think you made this point earlier. The reality of our world is that if you had the conversations in some parts of this country and some parts of this world, you would find out during that conversation that actually it's worse than you think, right? Like you're like, well, here, let's talk about, do you actually have some differences with, yes, I hate them and I want them all dead. Oh, shit. Oh, okay, wait. That exists. That's real. But I think in this case, probably we would have learned that no, it was all on the level. It was literally just the zoo trying to advertise.
Right. I think what you're getting at
Yeah.
is if 50% of the business owners and the customers on Finney Ridge actively hated black people and had, Nazi flags in their home and old minstrel show depictions of, well, not minstrel show, but old depictions of black kids with, that look like monkeys eating watermelon or something. And then you also see,
then it's their little inside joke, and now I'm sickened.
Or you just know that in their hearts,
Yeah.
they hate black people and they don't care if this lemur depiction bothers black people, or maybe they even want it to.
Yeah.
Then yeah. So
exactly.
so context, right?
Context matters,
That's why it's
yeah.
important. So if you just look at the lemurs and you don't understand the context, you don't know. But when you look at the context, you see that it isn't cultural appropriation. It's not racist.
Right.
I could see how someone would raise a question or be at their wit's end and go, I want to get rid of all reminders.
And by the way, I gotta say, like, it would have never been cultural appropriation, because if anything, the cultural appropriation is appropriating Nazi and eugenics culture to make statements about humans being close to animals.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're saying this, because maybe some people are screaming into their phone. I just randomly brought that into the conversation. That's not cultural appropriation. That was an accusation of racism.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm using that, I guess, as a foil for the other thing.
Sure.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But the sixth question, the last question, is who is the joke on? So let me give another example. It's Always Sunny. Sweet D, dressing up as a Puerto Rican.
Right.
You know those episodes where she dresses up as a Puerto Rican and she puts brown face on and a black wig, and she has this dress and she has long nails and she has an accent, so like what she considers to be a Puerto Rican accent, and she thinks it's hilarious. It's like this character that she's like, I'm a sassy Puerto Rican who just calls it as it is, and she walks up to these construction workers and she's like, white boys, they're so stuck up. They got like something up their ass. You know what I'm saying? I'm just joking. You have to see it. It's just hilarious. So who's the joke on? Because she's clearly donning the stereotype in her mind anyway of a quote unquote Puerto Rican, whatever that means. And she's doing the accent. She has a big butt. She like has this, like a pillow in her butt. She's acting obnoxious. I don't know if that's a part of the stereotype or something, but so when the show, the runner, Dennis and the guys, when they wrote this into the script and they decided to include it on the show, and FX decides to show this episode, who is the joke on Berto?
Yeah. Anytime as long as you've seen at least one It's Always Sunny episode, you realize that any character or culture or race that any one of those characters tries to impersonate or put on is it's only a negative reflection on them, because they are horrible, narcissistic, psychopathic human beings.
Right. Like these four people including well, 5
are some of the worst humans.
I mean, yeah, and it's not subtle about
No.
it. Now, having said that, so we would say the joke is on them.
Yeah.
It's not on Puerto Ricans. When Dennis and Mac dress up as Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon and they do blackface when they're doing Lethal Weapon 5 or whatever.
Lethal Weapon 5.
It's pretty, risky there, right? Literal blackface. But who's the joke on?
It's like when Robert Downey Jr. did blackface.
Right. Who's the joke on?
Right.
But the other question is, even if that's true, are you, as a white person, playing around, even with that joke, a little too willy-nilly?
Sure. It is dangerous.
Is it a little hurtful?
Yeah.
Even though they know, I know you're not. I know you're making a joke about racists.
Yeah.
But it still feels kind of bad, even though I'm not trying to make it feel bad.
Yeah.
Let me give an example. Licorice Pizza by Paul Thomas Anderson, who made a masterpiece, one battle after another. In Licorice Pizza, and by the way, so in Licorice Pizza, I love that movie a great deal, but there are 2 or 3 scenes that are wildly, just disparate from the rest of the movie, in which he has this guy, white guy, who is speaking this cartoonish Japanese accent to these Japanese women who are his wives. Because in the beginning of the movie, he has this one Japanese wife, and later in the movie, he has another Japanese wife or something like that. And he's speaking in English. He's like, "So, do you want to sell the restaurant?" I can't even do it, but he's doing that kind of. And then it turns out that the Japanese women, either they don't understand English or they don't need him to talk that way or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's so tonally strange compared to the rest of the movie. PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, got slammed for it, I think rightfully so, and he responded by saying, I was making fun. The joke was on him.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I took it.
and again, on the scale of things, to me, I still love PTA, I still love the movie, but it's a white guy that was trying to make a joke, and it either is just a really bad joke, there's other ways to make that joke, or it kind of felt like he was making a joke about Japanese people.
But see, it's interesting. We've had this debate before, because to me, it kind of felt like, do people not realize that this is how bad people were about these kinds of things?
Yeah.
Like, I remember when
They still are.
my aunt came to, absolutely. My aunt came to visit Colombia with her husband. And he was, a gringo. And he was born here. He was barely spoke Spanish, right? And I was a kid, but I remember that's the vibe I got. He was like trying to wink, I'm one of you people, but being over the top and yet passing it off as I'm just trying to blend in with you weird, different people.
Yeah. A more common example in American culture is a white guy who doesn't come from this world will hang out with black people or talk to one black person at work and start using language or accents that they've seen on Yo MTV Raps or something, and they're trying to bro down in that way. And but I just say this because if he had asked one Japanese American person, I guarantee you they would have said, "Oh, wait, what's the..."
Maybe tone it down a bit.
Or how about you make it a little bit like, or explain it earlier, or because I genuinely, by the end of the movie, I'm like, I don't understand what PTA was even trying to do with those scenes. They're so disparate from the rest of the movie. It really sticks out like a sore thumb, even if you aren't hurt by it. It just is like, huh? It feels like...
It calls too much attention to itself.
It feels like a Mad TV sketch or something. It's so silly,
so if he had maybe made it like he still liked that, but more subtly. So
a little bit more subtle. Yeah. Or if... because the other thing is the character is barely in the movie, so we don't really understand what his deal is. We also don't understand what the Japanese women, their deal is, because they never talk. If there was another Japanese person that was in the room or all you'd have to do is the wife would have to afterwards go, maybe she has an accent. She's like, I don't understand why he talks to me that way or something. Or or just something, but it's so cartoonish and so over the top. It feels like someone who is trying to comment about racism without knowing the context, and they're just swinging a bat around in a china shop. You know what I mean?
See.
And again, on the scale of things, whatever, it's just, it's not like Japanese Americans are hurting in our society,
Sure.
especially half Japanese people. So I don't feel like it's punching down, if it is punching at all.
Yeah. I took it, you know what it was? Because I remember vividly the scene in Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, where he's watching Breakfast at Tiffany's, and he's like horrified by the depiction of what they think Asians are and how everyone's laughing at it, right? So I took it more as like, remember, this is what people were like, like,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I lived through it. We could get into Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, depicting Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
And I'm not Chinese American, so I can't speak to it specifically, but I wasn't hurt by that, because anyone who knows anything about Bruce Lee, the human being, knows that he was kind of like that.
Yeah.
He was very cocky.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily justified that he thought he could waste anyone at any point. You know what I mean?
I by the way, I still don't think he comes off bad in that scene.
Right.
He's like half the size of the bodyguard or the stunt guy, and they have a brawl. Like,
and they go toe to toe.
Yeah.
And he did have an accent, Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a cartoonish version of a Chinese American.
No, they grabbed a good-looking guy that looked kind of like him, and
and he was and he was badass.
Yeah.
And
I mean, and he was going up again. They presented Brad Pitt's character is like the ultimate badass,
right? Right.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not Chinese, so I don't know, but and I know some people were hurt by it. So the question that we got to in the first question, I said, are most people from that group hurt by it? But we could argue that maybe we don't need most people. Maybe you only need 10% to say, well, even though 90% are either neutral or celebrate that joke, if 10% of people are hurt by it, is it worth it? And are you not taking into consideration their experience? Because not everyone in a group has the same kind of experiences. You know what I mean?
I guess it also the hurt type. It's like, well, he was one of our top celebrities, and you're making him look less capable of fighting. Okay, as opposed to like, well, we were enslaved for 200 years, and this is bringing that back. They're not the same category.
Right. I think that, and again, this is me as an outsider, and Japan historically, not I guess my great-grandparents were involved in this colonialism, literally, of China, Manchuria, anyway. But my impression of people that were hurt by it, they had worshipped Bruce Lee, because Bruce Lee has like a magical persona around him. Like people already have that of martial art gurus, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for him, and
the world
especially
fell in love with the guy. It's crazy.
And if you depicted him in a not a universally wonderful light, then just by that nature, you're bothered by it. It's like, that's not what would happen or something. And it's like, well, actually, that could have absolutely happened. Now, you could argue Quentin Tarantino doesn't usually have Asian Americans, so the one time he does, he's kind of the joke.
What are you talking about? He had, oh man, my joke is ruined because I couldn't pull the name right away. Billy, Kung Fu, Carradine.
Yeah.
That would have been such a good joke if I just nailed the name.
Yeah. I mean, Kill Bill has a lot of Asian.
Yeah, it does. But it's just funny that Bill is.
Well, I say Asian like cartoon. I mean, anyway, the whole movie is a homage to kung fu movies. Anyway, so again, to review the questions: do most people of that group consider it hurtful, or a good portion of that group consider it hurtful? And again, to drill down on that, how do you evaluate that? Well, you could ask, but what if you can't ask? And what if asking bothers them?
Right.
And what if the one person that answers doesn't really represent? So it's hard to know. And also, how hurt are they? do they properly understand what's happening, and does that really matter? When PTA made that joke, some people thought that was absolutely racist, like it was meant to be racist against Japanese people or Asian people. I had enough, benefit of the doubt to PTA to think, well, it couldn't be that. So he's either just like swinging a bat around in a in a crystal shop, saying, "Look, I'm not racist." It's just like whoa, like slower, But in terms of having something to go off of, that's one question to ask. Because I say this because a lot of people will say that's offensive, and meaning that's hurtful to that group, and they won't have any idea how that group even feels.
Sure.
Like with the Chinese prom dress,
right?
Which we could get into, but. And with the Chinese prom dress, the Chinese people, because this was a big story, and if you don't know, this white girl in high school in Utah wore a traditional Chinese dress that she found at a secondhand store, like that red silk kind of dress. She posted it on Twitter, not as an influencer, just as a kid, and got, she was the talk of the town
for the wrong reason
for like a month or something. And everyone was attacking her. And so reporters would go to Chinese people and say, how do you feel about it? And they're just like, oh, they were either neutral or they were actually appreciative of just like, oh, you're celebrating our culture and our.
But a lot of people were getting offended on their behalf.
On the white people were getting, but there were also Asian Americans that, because of racism against Asian Americans, as I can attest to, you're just looking for something to point at. And when something like this comes along, you don't want to be forgiving of it. You know what I mean? It's sort of like with black people when it came to O.J. Simpson, that they're just like, okay, well, maybe he's innocent, but you have Mark Furman and other police officers that are doing what they normally do. And this is on the heels of the riots and what happened, Rodney King. And all those cops getting out. We had video. And all those cops still got off. Like, no, we draw the line here. And so if you're an Asian American and you've experienced racism, this is specific to America. Chinese people don't know because they're not over here. So you have Asian Americans and they look at a white girl just flippantly wearing a Chinese dress, and you're just like, fuck you.
I didn't understand at first. What you're saying is that they asked people from China, not Chinese Americans. The people that were from China in China, they were like, this is great, or I don't care, whatever. And then there were people living here that were Chinese Americans that were like, we're offended or we're hurt.
We're hurt. Not everyone. I mean, there were plenty of Asians that were like, they didn't care.
That's unfortunate because, like, I mean, I can understand where it's coming from. They're hurt, but I'm like, oh man.
But as a group, Asian Americans, the hurt, if you want to be an activist, if you want to speak out, if you want to highlight, there's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it. To attack a high school girl who didn't do anything wrong. Was it malicious? No. Was it ignorant? Maybe. I don't even know.
I don't even know.
Does it have a hurtful history?
Right.
Not really.
Because that's the thing. The ignorance and the hurtful history would be like, no, that dress is used in the subjugation of the blah, blah, blah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but it's...
People tried to draw that connection by saying that Chinese American women would often have to become sex workers or something. I can't remember exactly what they were saying. And that dress would possibly be associated with, I don't know.
Sure.
So it had something like that, but it's certainly not like blackface or watermelon and black people, you know what I mean? Or monkeys and black people. And who's the joke on? Well, there is no joke. Is it a dominant group appropriating a marginalized group? That's an interesting question because Chinese people are not marginalized. Chinese are the dominant group. They are the dominant, they dominate over other groups like the Tibetans, for example. Are they, but are Asian Americans marginalized? Yes. So now she's a woman. So she's a marginalized group. But she's white. And she's in Utah. You know what I mean? So, but, it doesn't erase the whole thing, but it does add to the conversation. So as an Asian American, if you were hurt by that Asian dress or it was the last straw, like a monkey in Finney Ridge, let's talk about it, but don't pour all your energy into that one example because what it does is it attacks an innocent creature.
And now it turns people against your group
for
the wrong reasons.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly what they want. They want us to look like idiots so they can discount us. There is racism. There are problems. Is a cultural appropriation.
And in fact, I remember that, like, that commentary around the time of like, oh, okay, well then you just can't appease these people.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
So, do most people find it hurtful from that group? Is it a dominant group appropriating for a marginalized group? Is it malicious? Is it ignorant? Does it have a hurtful history? And who's the joke on?
Right.
So that's
a good list of questions.
Yeah. My final example here, Berto, is the Great British Bake Off.
Oh, I love that show.
Me too. Stacey and I watch it all the time. I cannot figure out why that show is so fucking good.
I know.
But it is so fucking good.
It is so good.
But it's so... like if you described it, you'd be like, "That sounds really boring," and I don't give a shit about baking.
And it's presented. I
don't even like to eat baked things. I don't like cake. I don't like any of that shit.
Yeah.
And yet, it is the best show on TV.
And it's presented in this like beautiful British pastoral way, and like I don't know, everything about it feels like so entertaining, and I get hungry. I want all the desserts.
Yeah, and Noel has like the dumbest jokes.
Oh, I know.
But yet I still love the guy. Anyway, but cultural appropriation. So I'm watching it with Stacey, and this is a season from 2020.
Okay.
And they're having Japan Week.
Ooh.
To celebrate Japanese baking, which has a rich history.
Sure.
By the way, and not a bad idea, but it was executed poorly.
Oh.
So the contestants were asked to make Japanese-inspired desserts, but what ended up happening was they made Chinese or Korean or what they thought was East Asian.
Oh, they didn't get guidance or something?
I remember watching it,
no.
and there was one thing that I remember I'll never forget. They made bao buns.
No.
They made like cake. Anyway, and I'm like, bao?
Because like,
that's not Japanese.
They should have provided with them like reference material. Like, here is Japan stuff.
Well, they also have a fucking phone, and they can.
Are they allowed to?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
They can Google like what's Japanese,
right.
And bao is not fucking Japanese, man. And the UK doesn't have a great history when it comes to colonializing East Asia. So, okay. And there were matcha flavored things. It was all. I remember watching it going, there's literally nothing on the show related to Japan.
Oh man,
it's all Korean or Chinese or just like generally East Asian or something. Because there are Japanese things you could make, mochi, for example, or I don't know. There's a lot of Japanese. I mean, Japan has same as China, has a rich culinary culture. Like there are a lot of options that you can grab from even in baking and stuff. Anyway, so there was that. They also, the contestants and the hosts, while joking around in the sort of little interstitials, were using fake Asian accents.
Oh no!
Like also. Blah, 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 blah.
No, they weren't.
A little bit.
This was 1975.
This is 2020.
Yikes!
And they even acknowledged that they didn't really know the difference between Japan and China.
No.
They made jokes about like, is that China or Japan? I don't even know. Yeah.
Not in 2020.
Yeah.
Come on.
Now.
And by the way, I'm not expecting everyone in the world to know all the differences about every culture. But if you are going to film a TV show that specifically is like, hey, make stuff about this culture.
Yeah. Yeah, you are the Great British Bake. You have.
I can only imagine.
You have millions upon millions. You have so many assistants, and you have plenty of time to plan.
I can only imagine the Colombian episode.
Exactly. So they would have like burritos and shit.
And here's some Jamaican jerk and like Polynesian cuisine and whatever. Just Isn't Philippines? They speak Spanish.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but burritos are not in Colombia, right? Yeah. That's a Mexican thing. Yeah. Because I'm like, did I just...
No.
Yeah. No. But here, to be clear, people in Japan, I don't know how they would feel. I don't know how they felt about that episode. They
Right.
could have been like, "Oh, that's funny. They have bao," and maybe if you're in Japan, because Japan is a racist colonial power in
Sure.
in the history anyway.
Sure.
In the they literally invaded for decades and raped and pillaged. They're as worse, if not worse, than the Nazis. They did horrific things to the Korean, Chinese, Filipino. They were
Right.
horrific. Torture, beheadings,
Yeah.
raping, genocide, horrific. They are the dominant. They lost that fucking war
Yeah.
because we crushed them, and they deserved it, by the way.
Yeah.
And they have not been doing that lately, but they're still fucking racist. They still are racist against Koreans, against Chinese, against Vietnamese, against Filipinos. You could argue they're racist against white Americans, but that's less of a problem. You know what I mean? Anyway, so they have now. If they were to complain and say, "Hey, you're hurting us," we'd say, "Well, you're a dominant culture. They could still be hurt. That's okay." But I don't know if they were hurt because I haven't asked any Japanese people.
Yeah.
That would matter to us if Japanese people were hurt by that. But what we're wondering about is the diaspora, the immigrants who live in UK, United States, watching this show, watching white people and watching UK, a colonial power, traditionally, talking about, it was a purposeful week that they planned months in advance, a Japan week. And at no point did they even bother with Googling the difference between Japanese and Chinese food. I mean, bao.
Yeah.
I mean, bao is like, it's like saying like, oh, spaghetti, that's like Kenyan food or something. It's bao is so associated with China.
Yeah.
And even the word bao doesn't make any sense.
No, but it's clear that they just had zero knowledge, information, or care. Frankly.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we walk through our questions, would most consider it hurtful? Now, when we say most, we could be talking about Japanese people, and I don't know because I didn't ask that. But we could also ask what group are we talking about? We could be talking about Asian Americans who live abroad, who live in white dominated cultures.
But I'm guessing if you showed the episode, I mean, I'm just guessing here, but if you showed the episode to 10 random Japanese people and you asked them, how does this make you feel? I do imagine hurt and anger would be like at least in 6 out of those 10.
Well, I don't know. That could be, but
I'm placing a bet.
But it could also be 1 because the rest could be like, well, I don't really care what Britain, like if Japan were to make Seattle week and they dressed up in flannel and ate.
Yeah, I guess it's distant enough for us.
They had
that we're
sourdough bread, which is associated with San Francisco. Would I be hurt as a Seattleite? No. So it's akin to that.
I see what you're saying. Now, but I will also say this because, look, yes, Japan in World War II but no one alive right now barely had anything to do with that. And even parents of people that are alive right now barely had anything to do with that, right? So they're not really a colonial power now. So, but I will say, whether the interview
but the colonial power bit or the history bit applies to say things like black people in the United States.
So how about this? How about the nature of the episode with the foods getting wrong? Maybe that part doesn't seem as hurtful because of the example you gave with the. I think doing the accents starts getting more racist-y feeling.
Right, but I would argue, at least I can speak to Asian people who live in the UK and live in the United States.
That might be actually
who have constantly had to deal with being lumped together as just this East Asian or just Asian culture when it's literally billions of people that represent a far longer, just exponentially longer history and cultural richness than the United States could ever even begin to understand.
But they're all Orientals, though.
Yeah. So to just lump it all, and how many times does that happen where someone looks at me and says like, "Oh, you must like Chinese food," or just the constant bother.
So you have
that.
more of a raw nerve there,
right? And so to see something like that happen, it's just like in 2020 on like a premiere show that has resources.
It's very surprising to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but
It's not surprising me because like you wouldn't see this in the United States as likely as you would in Britain, in my experience, because
Sure.
Britain has a particular blind spot when it comes to East Asia.
Yeah.
And because I don't know, maybe there's not as many East Asians there, or so, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, the other question is it a dominant group? Yes and no, right? I've already been over that.
Yeah.
UK traditionally dominant. Japan traditionally dominant. China traditionally not dominant, but China dominant now. So hard to say. Malicious.
I don't see it as malicious.
No, it's not malicious. Is it ignorant? Yes.
Yes, 100%.
Right. That's the kind of main thing. Is like it's willfully fucking ignorant.
Not only ignorant about the details, but ignorant about the effect.
Yeah. All they had to do was name it Asian Week, East Asian Week, and they would have been fine.
Yeah.
Like they didn't have to change anything.
Why did they even walk into jail?
That-
Like other than don't do the accents.
That means that all the white people, or all the people, all the UK, all the non-East Asian people, what it tells me is there's not a single East Asian person on that fucking decision-making tree, you know. But it just means that every single one of them, all the script writers, the directors, you know, the key grips that are working on the lighting guy, no one raises their hand and says, that's not Japanese. Maybe we should name it something else.
Well, it's interesting they decided to go so specific. Like it's like we're going to Okinawa week. It's actually not even Okinawa. This one neighborhood in Okinawa. And then it's all Asia.
Well, here's what I think happened is they were brainstorming because they have to come up with new weeks, right? And someone said Japan week, and another person said, oh, that'd be funny. We could dress up Noel in a samurai outfit, which they did.
Okay.
Which isn't
But that's
inherently,
fine.
it'd be like if you were doing barbecue and you had Noel dress up in a cowboy hat.
Yeah.
And I think that's as far as they fucking took it.
Yeah.
And no one
Oh my
bothered
God,
to
dude.
Google what exactly is Japanese food.
That's insane.
Okay. And because it's obviously a touchy area, you know, it should raise a flag of just like, maybe we should think a little bit harder about this. It shows racist ignorance.
But dude, this is okay. You know where it does piss me off? Because you know how in all those episodes where they have like, today we're making the particular Irish strudel, and the Irish strudel is very specific, and then the guy will judge it, be like, well, the crust, it's more, you did more of a Irish big blue boo. This is not quite the strudel. And they get so specific,
Yeah,
right?
and it was hilarious. They were evaluating their anyway.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I'll tell you, as a lover of that show, when I watch it, there's an asterisk, and it's not that they did something wrong.
Yeah.
It's that I don't feel welcome.
Yeah, it's like, you don't care.
I feel like I don't matter. I, as a human, don't matter to those people.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel good.
And obviously they didn't mean to, but damn.
But I don't matter enough for them to Google for an assistant.
Because again,
to Google.
it is like if they said Columbia Week, and it's just random Latino or adjacent stuff.
Right. This is what cultural appropriation does.
Yeah.
It alienates. It hurts. And
And see, that to me is a great-
it sends a fucking message.
Yeah, that to me is a really great example of where I would raise my hand and be like, yeah, I don't like that kind of cultural appropriation. Right. Yeah.
Now, I still watch the shit out of that show, and I still love it.
Yeah.
But it has an asterisk.
And we have the conversation.
Right.
And if we could have the producers and stuff, we could talk to them and say, hey, we love your show, but dude, what the hell?
Yeah. Final word, Bertum.
Which accent should I do? No, listen. I think I've learned a lot in this episode because I started the episode. I generally have a negative reaction to the quote cultural appropriation topic because I feel like it constrains me. Like, what do you mean? Why can't I wear a Princess Amidala t-shirt or something? You know, but these questions I actually like not to say that you come up with a lot of good things I like, but I was sort of expecting be like, okay, those are fine. But I actually could imagine myself using these questions in evaluating things about this, which is cool. And the other thing is, it makes me realize, like when we were having the discussion about the Finney Ridge thing, how much even in our, because like we don't live in the South, we live, in Seattle and stuff like that. But how much like latent fears and actual racism and fears about racism there are around our communities. And we don't talk, and communities are fairly isolated from each other, it's so, and we don't talk about it. So it's kind of eye-opening in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
but I also know that you're going to kick me out of your Halloween party now because of my costume.
Uh-oh.
Because I'm culturally appropriating a British comedian. So.
Uh-oh. Well, that does it for that episode of Psychology Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.